Every year, there's a moment when summer quietly slips away, and a new school year begins to appear on the horizon. You can almost feel it in the air. Part of you wishes the long days and late nights could last a little longer. But another part of you is curious about what's coming next. New friends to meet, old friendships growing stronger, maybe a club to join a team to try out for, and somewhere in all of it, the quiet chance to become a better student and maybe even a better version of yourself. But excitement isn't the only thing people feel when a new school year begins. If we're being honest, there's usually a little nervousness mixed in too. Sometimes more than a little. Maybe you're standing right at the edge of a big change, the jump from elementary school to middle school, or from middle school to high school. Suddenly the halls feel bigger, the expectations feel heavier, and you're not quite sure what the next step is supposed to look like. You might be wondering what the teachers will be like, whether the classes will be harder, or where exactly you'll fit in once everything starts moving again. For some of you, it's not just a new grade, it's a completely new school. New faces everywhere. New routines. New rules you haven't quite figured out yet. Walking into a place where nobody really knows you can feel exciting. But it can also feel a little lonely at first. You start asking yourself questions most people never say out loud. Will I make friends here? Will people accept me? Am I going to find my place? And then there are those of you who are already looking towards something even bigger. Maybe you're a senior now, and the conversations around you have started to change. People are talking about college applications, deadlines, essays, financial aid. Suddenly, the future feels closer than it ever has before. And with that comes another quiet worry, where you'll go, whether you'll get in, and how your family might afford it. But for some students, the worries reach beyond school itself. You turn on the news and see stories about war overseas. You hear adults talking about recessions, about jobs being lost, about families trying to make ends meet. And sometimes those big headlines don't feel so far away. Sometimes you see those worries in your own home. Maybe you notice it in your parents' voices. Maybe you see it on their faces when they think no one is looking. Some of you are dealing with things that ask you to grow up faster than you should have to. Maybe you have an older brother or sister serving overseas, and you're trying to stay strong for your family while they're away. Maybe your mom is working a second shift, and you're the one helping take care of younger brothers and sisters after school. Maybe you're a little older yourself and you've picked up a part-time job because your dad is out of work. That's a lot for anyone to carry, especially when you're still trying to figure out who you are and where you're going. And sometimes in quiet moments, those pressures can leave you wondering what your own future is really going to look like. And when all those questions start piling up about school, about family, about the future, it can sometimes make the road ahead feel uncertain. You might begin to wonder whether the plans you once imagined are still possible, whether the dreams you carried a year ago are still realistic now. But there's something important that deserves to be said clearly, especially at moments like this. Nobody gets to write your destiny but you. Not the economy. Not the circumstances you were born into. Not the doubts that sometimes creep into your mind when things get difficult. The future sitting in front of you right now is still yours to shape. Your life becomes what you decide to make of it. That may sound like a big statement, maybe even a little hard to believe at times, but it's true. Because the truth is that possibility has a way of hiding inside effort. It lives in the quiet decisions you make, everyday decisions about whether you keep moving forward, whether you keep believing that something better is possible. There is not a single one of you whose future has already been decided. There is not a single path that is closed forever. What matters most is whether you're willing to imagine something bigger for yourself. Whether you're willing to picture a future that stretches beyond what today might look like. The kind of future where you grow into someone you're proud of. Someone who didn't just settle for what seemed easy, but kept reaching for something more. Because big dreams don't begin with certainty. They begin with belief. They begin with the simple decision to say, maybe I can do more than I think. And once that thought takes root, something powerful starts to happen. The future stops feeling like something distant and mysterious. It starts to feel like something you're building step by step. The truth is, nothing, absolutely nothing, is beyond your reach if you're willing to dream boldly enough and care deeply enough about the path you're on. Your story isn't finished. In many ways, it's only just beginning. But that belief in your future connects to something else that matters more today than it ever has before: your education. At some point during the year ahead, there will be evenings when you're still sitting at the table, long after everyone else has finished dinner, trying to make sense of a homework assignment that feels like it's taking forever. There will be nights when you're studying for a test and the clock keeps moving closer to midnight. And there will definitely be mornings when the alarm goes off, rain tapping against the window, and the last thing you want to do is drag yourself out of bed and head to school. In moments like that, it's easy to wonder if all of it is really worth it. But it is. What you're doing right now, showing up to class, reading, writing, thinking, asking questions, matters more than you might realize in the moment. Because nothing will shape the direction of your life quite like the education you build for yourself. The truth is that the opportunities waiting for you in the future are more and more connected to how far you're willing to go in school. The farther you go in your education, the more doors begin to open. New possibilities appear. New paths become visible. The kind of future you once imagined starts to feel more real, more reachable. Education has always been important, but today it carries even greater weight. The world you're growing up in is more connected than ever before. The ideas you learn, the skills you develop, the curiosity you build, they place you into a global community of students who are all preparing for their own futures. And right now, students in classrooms across the world are working hard too. In cities thousands of miles away, places like Beijing in China or Bangalore in India, young people are studying late into the night, preparing themselves for the opportunities ahead. That means your effort here doesn't just affect you. It shapes something bigger. Your success in school helps determine the kind of future you'll build for yourself, but it also contributes to the strength and creativity of the country you're growing up in. The ideas you develop, the knowledge you gain, the problems you learn how to solve, they all become part of the story of what the next generation will create. So when the work feels difficult, when the days feel long, remember this. The effort you're putting in right now is building something that stretches far beyond the classroom. But building that kind of future isn't something any one person does alone. Education has always been a shared effort. It takes many people working together, each playing their part. There are people in government whose responsibility is to make sure schools have the support they need. Leaders at the state level, city leaders, school superintendents, and others who help shape the systems that keep classrooms running and opportunities open. Their job is to make sure students have access to strong schools and the chance to prepare for college, for careers, and for whatever paths they choose in life. Then there are the schools themselves, principals who guide the culture of a school, teachers who show up day after day, often going far beyond what anyone sees from the outside, helping students understand difficult ideas, encouraging them when they struggle, and pushing them to reach higher than they thought they could. Parents play a role too. The people at home who care deeply about whether you're learning, whether you're growing, whether you're preparing yourself for the future, waiting ahead. All of those people share a responsibility to give students the best education possible. But there's another side to that story, because students have a responsibility too, and it begins with small choices that happen every single day. It's the decision to show up to school even when the morning feels too early. It's the choice to listen in class, to stay curious about what you're learning, to finish the assignments that challenge you. It's studying when a test is coming up instead of hoping things will somehow work out on their own. It's also about the habits you build along the way. Learning to stay focused, learning to take pride in your work, learning to carry yourself with discipline and determination. Those habits might not seem dramatic in the moment, but over time they begin to shape something powerful. They build a sense of excellence that carries into everything you do. And that kind of effort, repeated day after day, becomes the foundation that real success is built on. Now, hearing all of this, you might imagine that some people have always been perfectly disciplined, that they were always the students who stayed focused, always the ones who never struggled with motivation. But that isn't always how the story begins. There was a time when I wasn't exactly the most serious student myself. When I was about the age many of you are now, I had started to get a little casual about school. I was smart enough to get by, so I didn't always feel the need to push myself. My grades weren't terrible, but they were slipping. I hadn't even begun to think seriously about college applications. In my mind, things were fine. I was doing just enough. But my mother could see something I wasn't willing to admit yet. One day, she sat me down for a conversation. And if you've ever had one of those conversations with a parent, you probably know the feeling. You're sitting there thinking, I don't really need this lecture. I'm doing okay. That was exactly what was going through my mind. I started to say something along those lines, that I wasn't failing, that everything was under control. She didn't even let me finish. She stopped me right there and said something I've never forgotten. She told me that I couldn't just sit around waiting for luck to carry me through life. She looked me straight in the eye and said that I could get into any school I wanted in the country if I was willing to put in a little effort. Then she paused and asked a question that landed harder than anything else. Do you remember what effort looks like? That moment stayed with me. At first, it was uncomfortable to hear. No one likes being told they're not giving their best. But over time, her words started to sink in. Something shifted. I began taking my studies more seriously. I started putting real effort into my classes, and little by little things began to change. My grades improved. My confidence improved. The possibilities in front of me started to look different. That experience taught me something simple but powerful. Hard work. Not luck is what changes the direction of your life. Of course, even knowing that effort matters, there are still moments when doubt creeps in. You might look at a subject like math or science and quietly tell yourself, that's just not my thing. Maybe you've said it before. Maybe you've heard friends say it too. And it's true that people discover different talents as they grow. Some students pick up certain subjects quickly, while others need more time to work through them. Each person has strengths that show up in different places. That's part of being human. But here's something worth remembering. Just because something feels difficult today doesn't mean it always will. A lot of people assume that success belongs to whoever is naturally the smartest in the room. But in reality, the difference between people who excel and people who struggle often comes down to something much simpler. Effort. The willingness to keep working when something isn't easy the first time. The patience to try again after a mistake. The courage to step into challenges instead of avoiding them. Sometimes it means asking for help when you don't understand something. That might feel uncomfortable at first, but teachers and family members are there for exactly that reason. They want to know when you're struggling because they believe you can figure it out. And when you keep working at something, really working at it, you might be surprised by what begins to change. Concepts that once felt confusing start to make sense. Skills that once felt out of reach slowly become familiar. Along the way, you might even discover abilities you didn't realize you had. So don't step away from challenges. Lean into them. Learn from mistakes. Give yourself the chance to grow. Because more often than not, success isn't about being the smartest person in the room. It's about being the one who keeps trying. But school isn't only about what you learn from books. It's also about how you treat the people around you. And if we're being honest, that's not always easy, especially during the teenage years. There are times when students can be tough on each other. Sometimes people say things they don't fully understand the weight of. Sometimes differences become targets. And middle school or high school can make that even more intense because being a teenager means you're already trying to figure out who you are. That search for identity can feel confusing. I remember going through it myself. When I was young, my mother was white and my father was black. My father had left when I was very small. And growing up, I found myself wrestling with questions about where I belonged and what made me who I was. Many of you may be going through your own version of those questions right now. Maybe it's about your background, your culture, your interests, or simply the things that make you feel different from the people around you. And sometimes there are kids who try to take those differences and turn them into something negative, using them to tease, to exclude, or to make someone feel like they don't belong. But here's the truth that takes time for many people to realize. The things that make you different are not something to hide. They are the very things that make you unique. Every person carries a different story, different experiences, different strengths. And when those differences come together, they create something bigger than any one individual. That mixture of backgrounds and perspectives is part of what gives this country its character. It's part of what allows people to understand each other, to learn from each other, and to build something stronger together. So the next time you notice someone who seems different, remember, those differences aren't weaknesses. They are part of what makes all of us stronger. Not long ago, I read a letter that stayed with me. It was written by a 12-year-old girl from Georgia named Tamara Robinson. In her letter, she talked about how hard she works in school and about the community service she does alongside her brother. But what stood out wasn't just the work she described, it was the way she thought about it. She wrote something simple but powerful. She said that she tries to achieve her dreams while helping others achieve theirs. And then she added a line that felt like a motto for how the world should work. That, she said, is how the world should work. Think about that for a moment. Working hard to reach your own goals is important. Everyone has dreams they want to pursue, challenges they want to overcome, and a future they want to build. That drive matters. It pushes you forward and helps you grow. But Tamara understood something else at the same time. Success isn't only about climbing higher by yourself. It's also about reaching back and helping someone else move forward too. When you help a friend understand something they're struggling with, when you encourage someone who feels like giving up, when you use your time or your energy to improve your community, those small choices begin to shape something bigger than any one person. They build a culture where people don't just chase their own dreams. They help others believe in theirs as well. And when that happens, something remarkable begins to grow, a community where effort, responsibility, and generosity move side by side. That's the kind of world Tamara imagined, and it's the kind of world each of you has the power to help create. So as the new school year begins, remember that the future isn't something distant waiting to happen. It's something you start shaping every day with your effort, your choices, and the way you lift the people around you. Keep believing in what you can become. Keep working toward the goals that matter to you, and most importantly, help each other along the way. Because when one of you rises, the future rises with you. Stay close and we'll keep exploring ideas like this together.